You have to use straps on lat exercises or your back won't grow, right? Because your grip will limit it. This is really one of the silliest things I've ever heard, personally. And I find it funny as someone who actually gets really good back development easily. You guys see my back. I've always had a good mind-muscle connection with my back. And I don't train with straps very, very rarely. I've had short phases where I do, but for the most part, I don't really use straps because they're not necessary. They're not necessary at all for back growth. And the thing is, when I say that, here would be my response. I'm not saying plenty of pro bodybuilders and people with amazing backs didn't use straps and use this logic. Okay, right? But how many didn't use straps and got just as good of results? I want to ask that question again. If straps were the key, right? If using straps, and people say it all the time like it's some great key, if you just use straps, then you'll get great back development because then your grip won't limit it. They almost act like there's an advantage to it. I'm saying it's purely a personal preference. I don't like my lifters to use straps as a coach personally, okay? As a general rule. I'm not saying it can't have its place, but my point is, if it was so necessary, then how come so many guys, just as many guys have amazing backs who don't pull with straps as the guys who attribute the straps to being pivotal to their back development? Why is that? Because it wouldn't be true. If that was true, then there wouldn't be so many guys with massive lats and traps who don't use straps, but there's tons of them. And I'm not saying the other isn't true, but let me ask you a question. If someone tried to convince you that drinking only red watercolor with red coloring, was the key to gaining muscle, and then a bunch of guys did it, okay, and they gave you an explanation why, but then you saw also a bunch of guys who drink normal water who were just as big, wouldn't it be kind of suspect? Wouldn't you question it at that point? Hey, but people say, but there's no direct relationship. And I'm saying there's no direct relationship between the straps and your back. There's none at all. Okay? It's personal preference. And here's the thing. What do straps allow you to do? They allow you to cheat more. That's it. If you want to do really, really heavy cheat rows, right, with weights that there's no way you can double overhand grip, straps can help you to do that. But that's because you were intentionally doing a cheat row. You're doing a cheat row in the hope of getting an eccentric overload. That's why we do big, heavy cheat exercises. Okay, obviously not the concentric, because the concentric isn't any more, stimulus. It's hoping to get a heavy eccentric with a weight you wouldn't be able to lift. That's the idea. Okay? But that's just one style of training. And I don't necessarily think it's better. I think it's relatively equal, okay? And I'll make my case for that. You also notice that the guys who train that way end up with more back injuries. They end up with more tears. Just something to think about. And I'm not saying it doesn't work. Again, I want to be clear. Heavy eccentric loading absolutely can stimulate muscle growth. I don't think that's in question. And when you're doing really heavy rows and things, and with a cheat row, that's what you're doing. You're cheating on the concentric, and you're still getting a contraction out of it because the muscles, the primary movers are still working, and then you're getting an eccentric overload and hopefully catching it, right? Some point in there, the muscles are having to decelerate it, your lats and traps and all that. All right, that's the idea. Sure, of course that will grow muscle. Not denying that it'll grow muscle. It can actually be very effective. The question becomes, is it more effective? Or even if it were a hair more effective, you've got to balance out versus the slightly stricter movements with less weight, okay, that you are able to grip. They don't have to be perfectly, beautifully strict all the time. No one's saying that. But if a little more strict with the weight you can grip in your hand, you're less likely to tear anything. The other thing, you're less likely to overtrain as much. Your joints aren't going to get as beat up. Okay? I'm saying that there's a case for both. Okay? I mean, and I want to be clear. I do think that there is something to that sort of heavy overload eccentric training. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I think it actually can be extremely effective. I mean, you can make a hell of a case for it, mechanically, scientifically, right? What I'm saying is it beats you up more. Okay, it beats you up more. Okay, then on top of that, then you got to deal with the fact that your forearms and grip may be lagging. Okay, then you got to play catch up. All right. And if you're someone who doesn't have the best arm genetics, someone like me, man, that can be a lot of work, because that arm genetics carries over to forearms too. And then you got to work around that. That's a lot to work around. But I mean, using me as a perfect example, you guys see how I train there. In proportion, granted I'm an old guy, I get it. In proportion, is my back disproportionately small? Are my arms doing all the work so that my arms just way overpower my lats and traps and all that when you see me from behind? No, of course not. And that's just using me as an anecdote, but there are plenty of others. A whole lot of guys out there. And a whole lot of raw rowing. A lot of old school guys, definitely, who had great backs. Had absolutely great backs. I've seen a lot of videos of Arnold and Franco and those guys doing raw rowing. You'll see other IFBB pros. But my point is, it's not necessary. So when people say, "Oh, it's going to be a problem," no, it's not going to be a problem. If you're rowing and pulling fairly strict, it's probably not going to be a problem. I'm going to be honest with you, it probably isn't. You're just literally shortchanging your grip. Your grip could be coming along for the ride, and if you just threw the straps away, it would catch up really quickly. It would be one less thing you have to throw in the gym bag, one less thing you have to throw on. Probably safer in the long run, because again, weights that we can grip and hold, that our grip strength can handle, we tend to be less likely to get hurt. The other thing to think about: overtraining, nervous system fatigue. Grip strength is a good indicator of what's going on there. If we can't grip weights that we can normally grip, it's a great feedback tool for when we push too hard for our recovery. Our peripheral nervous system is giving out. Our risk of injury is probably going up. Okay, so training strapless is actually a really, really good feedback tool for you as well. Okay, so this is why I make the case for it, and I'm not telling people that speaking in absolutes. I'm simply saying what I personally see as the advantages and disadvantages. And that's the reason you don't really see me doing a lot of work with straps. I don't advocate it. And I just simply don't agree that your grip is going to limit your back development. Not if you're training strict. It really shouldn't be. And if it is, it's because you did too much stuff with straps for too long and you need to play catch up. But it's easily fixable. It's easily fixable. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.